You are listening to the Sensible People podcast. This is a bonus episode that is sports-based. Please enjoy.
Sensible, adjective, having, using, or showing good sense or sound judgment.
I'm not a classy guy.
Come on, 2 words, nipple belt.
You look like peaches and syrup.
I think Amber would look good scalped.
Not sensible.
Sensible people.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have not done a bonus episode like this before, but there's a lot of breaking news over the last week or so that we feel like we need to touch on. So we have Greg Peterson, who's a lead college basketball expert and highly acclaimed producer at VSIN, the Vegas Stats and Information Network. You can hear them on the XM radio, channel 204. Coming onto the show, and we're going to interview him about the recent Supreme Court ruling on sports betting. And Ryan and I, as you know, are sports fans, although we do a comedy show. We do like to talk about sports here and there.
We do.
And we are degenerate gamblers, aren't we?
Well, first of all, you haven't given me my chance to say, what's up, sensible fuckers?
Likewise, yes. What is up, my friends? So this Supreme Court ruling on May 14th, essentially the Supreme Court struck down this 1992 federal law that effectively banned commercial sports betting in most states. So this ruling on the 14th opens the door to legalizing the estimated, what do we want to say, $150 to $200 billion illegal wagers.
Offshore illegal, whatever you want to say.
Right. Industry on professional and amateur sports that Americans make every year. So what do you think about this? How does it going to change? Before we get into Greg, obviously Greg's going to have a more valid opinion than you or I have.
How's it going to change for me? I'm hoping I can just drive uptown and and place a bet, and not have to go through offshore or a bookie or.
Well, that's the thing. B when she found it, when I was trying to explain this news, she's like, "Oh, great!"
I'm hoping one day. I mean, I know we've been to OTBs before for horse racing, where we sat and drank and watched horse races. I hope we could sit and watch basketball, hockey, baseball, football games and bet all day long.
That's actually an interesting point, because the OTBs, obviously in Illinois, where we are based as a podcast, we go to them because it is a place that we can gamble legally. Yeah. And although you and I gamble online and whatever,
I feel safe
offshore,
there. It's my safe space.
we go to these OTBs because we can gamble on horse racing. I like to gamble on horse racing, but and in particular, probably even more so, you are not the biggest horse bettors per se. And if we were to go to this OTB, where now you've got a sports book attached to it as well, I feel like that may negatively impact those race books, because the sports book is probably going to be our primary source of entertainment, and we're going to spend all our money and time there.
I didn't grow up playing, Horse Racing 98 on the Xbox or N64. I could give a shit what the fucking horses do, but we only do it because we like to gamble.
We do. What else is going on in the world of sports before we get into Greg?
I mean, this is all sports focused right now, which is a little different from our Sensible Nation format. But how about the Vegas Golden Knights? I mean, Vegas obviously is the king of sports gambling and gambling in general. But if you guys don't know, the Vegas Golden Knights NHL hockey team is an expansion team this year. It's their first year, and they are in the Stanley Cup. That's absolutely incredible.
It's unprecedented. It's pretty awesome. We should have looked this up beforehand, but I can't imagine this has happened with across any sport, an expansion team making the finals or the cup.
Not in their
World
first year.
Series,
No way.
In their first year or the Super Bowl.
Because we were bullshitting. We don't have the exact numbers in front of us, and I guess we could probably look it up. But the Miami, or at the time the Florida Marlins, I want to say they got to the World Series. Was it within 3 or 4 years?
They made it in 97. So that would have been a couple years, because I believe the expansion teams came into the picture in 94. But nonetheless, Vegas Knights, fantastic story. And what's really interesting
93 is season.
Right.
They were a team. So within 4 years, which is still incredible.
It is. But nonetheless, huge, monumental story. Really, really cool. I think a lot of the people in this nation that watch hockey are rooting for the Vegas Knights. I know I am. What's really interesting, and maybe we'll get Greg to touch on this, is that the liability that Vegas has because so many fucking people bought souvenir tickets at 500 to 1, 400 to 1, whatever the
I
ridiculous
feel
odds
so
were.
bad for Vegas.
And the liability they have if the Knights were to win, Vegas is essentially going to get smoked at the books because all these people are
They
going
are.
to cash their souvenir tickets they thought had no chances.
I hope they win, honestly. I really do.
What about the Cubbies? Cubbies are on.
Well, I mean, how crazy is this NL Central? I mean, I know it's the first quarter of the season, but this NL Central race seems like, I don't know if it's going away, man. I don't know about you, but I honestly don't know if these four teams, you
Dude,
got
the fucking Brewers always go
Brewers,
away.
Pirates, Cubs, and St. Louis.
Wait, weren't the Brewers the Pirates, I'm sorry, supposed to be complete trash?
Trash. Well,
They
gave
gave up McCutchen and Marte, right? Or they still have
No.
Marte?
They have Marte. They gave
Yeah.
up McCutchen and who's their
Cole. He's on the.
Cole.
He's having a
What? Yeah, no.
fantastic year too.
Garrett
on,
Cole.
Houston.
their ace.
Yeah,
Went to New
Houston.
York. Or no, Houston. Sorry. And yeah,
there's
I mean,
your auditory processing.
Yeah, my
Sorry.
auditory processing. But this NL Central is shaping up to be. I think it's going to be one hell of a race.
It
And
is.
I still think the Cubs definitely have the most talent, but let's just hope it outshines and they rise to the top like we know they can.
I certainly hope so.
I don't know about you. I know our dads. We talk about our dads all the time. Steve and Dad, I love you guys both, and they're crazy. But talking to my dad about you, Darvish, is one of the most entertaining conversations ever. The only thing that's more entertaining is talking to him about Lovie Smith. But he was just in conversation, didn't even tell me. One day I came over a couple days ago, and he keeps talking about this Cubs pitcher named Pooh Garbage. He's like, fucking Pooh Garbage this and Pooh Garbage that. He can't throw strikes. I was like, who the hell are you talking about? He's like, you fucking Darvish. So I was like, you call him Pooh Garbage? He's like, yeah, he fucking sucks. So I
Give
thought
him
that
a chance. He's like a month in.
You know what, though? I've never been a big fan of you, Darvish. I know last year when he was with the Dodgers, I went to a playoff game on the rooftop with my brother and I and our wives. And I was screaming at that time, fuck you for you, Darvish, because he sucked. And I know it's only been a quarter of the season and there's a lot of time to go. I just have never been a big fan of you, Darvish. I don't know. I don't know if it's the nostalgia of Jake Arrieta winning a World Series.
Love Jake. Love Jake.
I mean, no matter what, I know it's a business decision, but I was a little bitter seeing him go. And I think in the long run, Darvish probably is the better pitcher, but I don't know. I will say he's definitely making me nervous.
Time will tell. Time will tell. Well, let's interview Greg Peterson because I'm excited to talk to him.
Let's get to Greg.
Ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned earlier on the show, we are privileged to be joined by America's bracketologist, Greg Peterson. He's the co-host of the March to Madness on XM Radio's Vegas Stats and Information Network and often considered the Mel Kiper Jr. of college hoops. Greg, welcome to Sensible People, my man.
Good to be on. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Pleasure. Greg, May 14th turned out to be the biggest day in the history of sports betting. And, you know, many know of the news, but I feel like there's a lot of misinformation out there being shared, leading to many's lack of understanding, if you will, as to what this actually means. So let's start with the states. With the Supreme Court's ruling, what does this mean for the states that decide to legalize sports gambling? And I guess, is it safe to say that New Jersey would likely be the first in joining Nevada, which of course was granted the exemption back in '92?
Yep, it certainly does. It means that every state can decide whether or not sports betting will be allowed in its state. New Jersey passed a law in 2012. They're right now just sorting out the kinks through Congress. They should have sports gambling up and running probably, I would say, within the next couple weeks. They're right now fighting that out in the courts. I know that Monmouth Park is trying to get sports betting up and running by Memorial Day, so they're acting very quickly. And there are a couple other states that have either passed bills, they've got bills in the works, or have introduced them. States like Pennsylvania, Mississippi come to mind. So there will be quite a few others that will join New Jersey, but they should be the first in line to join Nevada in that respect.
I'm sure Atlantic City's happy about that.
Oh, yes. The Taj Mahal is going to be popping when you're able to lay down a bet on the New York Giants.
No
Hell
doubt.
yeah.
So will the regulations be different per state?
The way that it's structured, it probably will be. Like the taxation is probably going to be a little bit different from state to state, because typically the way it works in Nevada is that of the profit, 6.75% is paid to the government. I've seen some bills, I mean, Pennsylvania comes to mind. Some are as high as 34%. The startup fees seem to be varying from state to state, so it seems like it will vary. And that's a little unfortunate just because I feel like everyone should try to adapt either the same policy that Nevada has or something similar because it's tried and true and it's worked for many years.
No doubt. And would you say a state like Illinois would be much more likely to legalize than a state like Indiana where, say, the NCAA is headquartered?
I actually wouldn't say so. I think that it just is a state value sort of thing because I've noticed that there are some states that are liberal, some that are conservative. It really doesn't matter when it comes to sports betting. I feel like it's more of an age thing. I feel like the younger folks are more into sports betting than, say, the older people. I feel like older folks, there's a little bit more of a taboo out there with some of them. So
of course,
I don't necessarily think it's a state-by-state thing. I think that it's just an overall age and who's all in the state sort of deal.
It sounds very similar to legalization of marijuana, Greg.
Oh, it absolutely is. I am 100% with you there because there are just some areas where sports gambling, it's still looked at as a little bit more taboo. Meanwhile, others, it's just completely fine.
Yep. So say it gets legalized in Illinois. Would you say the establishments where people can go place bets and watch the games would be limited to racetracks, let's say OTBs, perhaps casinos, or are there other outlets that maybe the average Joe isn't thinking of?
I think that sports apps have become just so huge in regards to betting because there's so many in the state of Nevada. You sign up at a casino and you can bet from anywhere. So I feel like many states, when they do legalize it, they'll probably get the apps up and running. What these apps do is they actually track what state you're in. So that way people that download the app cannot place a bet outside the state of Nevada. They've really got this high tech. I mean, there's so much monitoring and everything like that. So I do feel like sports apps will be the wave of the future. And that allows for more in-game betting as well. Because if you're placing down a bet at like a sports book, a casino or something like that, very hard to get in-game numbers.
Greg, as Taylor mentioned, I love gambling, and this is more of a long-term question because I know it's not going to be ready in the next week or month or so, but do you ever envision, just like, as you mentioned, we're from Illinois, that I can walk into a gas station or a convenience store and buy a lotto ticket or buy a scratch-off? Would I ever be able to go in there and place a bet?
Or are they just not set up for that type?
I mean, there are some places in Nevada that actually are set up. There's a place 2 miles down the road. There's a gas station where I can go to a William Hill and place a bet. So
no kidding.
That actually could be a reality in a couple of years, and it's becoming more and more popular. There's more and more outlets in Nevada in which you're able to gamble, and I feel like it's going to be the same across the states.
I can't wait to go buy a pack of smokes and place a bet.
Yes.
So
the American dream.
There you go.
The other thing that Taylor and I were discussing before we had you on is, so eventually we're thinking, if Illinois legalizes it, which is we're thinking that's going to happen, is there going to be a day where we can go to, let's say, a Cubs game at Wrigley Field, and before the game I can go walk up to the booth and place a bet for that game and sit and watch the game with my bet?
I do think so. I think many of you guys have heard of the name Sam Panayotovich. He
course.
goes back to this story time and time again where there a couple of his buddies went to England, and when they went to England to watch a soccer game, when they sat down at their seat, they were greeted by a menu. And that menu had on there a bunch of betting options for the game. They could decide what they wanted to wager on. They could just walk up to a counter, walk up to a pretty much concession-style booth and place a bet.
It's unbelievable. It seems like, America isn't behind the times a lot, but with regards to sports betting, we certainly are.
The only personal problem I have, Greg, is I only last probably about 1 or 2 innings at Wrigley Field for a Cubs game, and then I'm done. So you mentioned a lot about the mobile apps and where you think that's going, but what do you think about the sites like FanDuel and DraftKings? Do they capitalize on this legalization of sports gambling?
I do think so. I mean, the biggest loser on Monday was the I don't care about your fantasy league movement, because now more and more people are going to be in on this. I feel like because sports betting is now legal, it will open up those avenues even more, because if you remember DraftKings, FanDuel, they had that big fight in New York.
Yep.
I feel like that will actually help them out even further. The taboo and the stigma is going to be less and less on that. And you feel like when people get a little bit of a taste of sports betting, they're going to want to try different things. And I feel like daily fantasy sports is actually becoming more and more popular.
Yep.
And I feel like this could help it even further.
Agreed. How does this ruling affect Vegas?
I think that Vegas is actually going to be quite good for one in the short term because, let's face it, not every state is going to have legal sports betting. New Jersey is going to be the first ones in on it. Mississippi State will probably follow soon after. I think that Pennsylvania will probably get this legalized as well. But it's not like it's going to be legal across all 50 states within a year or anything like that.
Of course.
And it also allows people to, when they get a taste of sports betting in, say, a Mississippi and say in New Jersey, they might want to go to the mecca of it, and that's right here in Las Vegas, because there are just certain places that you go to for the atmosphere, to be able to go to the ultimate king of sports betting, and that's right here in Las Vegas, because there are so many casinos, and then you have all the nightlife, the great nightclubs, things like that. You have all the
food,
musical performances.
Yep.
And let's not forget, if you take a look at how much money Las Vegas makes across its casinos, about $32 million of it in March was made off of sports betting. Penny slots, over $350 million. So
No
it's not
shit.
like it's all made off of sports betting.
Right.
The casinos will be just fine.
That's Greg. I'm from a northern suburb of Chicago in Lake County, and we have penny slots literally in every single bar, every gas station, every convenience store, and it's just huge for those establishments because there's so many people playing the penny slots.
Yeah, I know. It's so stupid, too, because it's like, you're not going to win.
I love it.
It's so funny, because I know that on Vegas Stats and Information Network, a show called Follow the Money does a segment called Win Some, Lose Some, like the good results for the books, bad results for the books.
I'm familiar with it.
With penny slots, it's win some all the time.
Exactly.
So-
yeah, we do a segment called Sensible or Not Sensible. We call penny slots not sensible.
Bullshit.
Good call.
Along the same lines, what do you think the establishments of like Bovada and the offshore? How do you think they stand in this?
I think that if it's done correctly, this will greatly hurt offshore betting, because if it's done correctly, you don't want the sporting leagues dipping their hand in the cookie jar, taking out even more. As long as the prices can stay competitive, it will greatly hurt offshore betting. But if, say, the NBA, the NFL, and all that get their cut, it might cause that minus 110 that you typically lay on a typical bet. You lay down $110 to try to get back 100. If that raises to 115, 120, that allows the offshore books to have a better number. So as long as we can keep all these other entities from dipping their hand in the cookie jar, I have a feeling that the offshore books will be hurt, and hurt badly.
Yeah.
Valid point.
I did see some breaking news that after this broke, Pete Rose drove straight to Cooperstown
Tried to check in on his Hall of Fame status.
Exactly. So, what do you think of his Hall of Fame status after this news?
Any impact?
I don't think so. I think that the baseball has stood its ground, and I still don't think you should be allowed to bet if you are in a professional sports league. I mean, whether or not it's on your team, because everyone says that Pete Rose was only betting on his team. But with that said, you're going to manage a game differently if you have money on your team or not, because there are some managers that recognize, hey, this is a 162-game season. Meanwhile, Pete Rose might be like, in game 85, this game means more than anything else because I placed a triple max wager on this game. So I don't think that Pete Rose should be allowed in.
So as much as we want to say sensible to gambling on your teams, probably not sensible.
I don't think so. Not at all.
Hey, I agree with you saying Pete Rose is not allowed in, but can you just tell us that you agree that Sammy Sosa needs to be in someday?
I do think so, because,
there you go.
I'm pretty sure that Sammy Sosa used PEDs, but in that era, who didn't?
Exactly.
I think that we need to allow all these guys, because for all we know, there could be a couple guys in the Hall of Fame that we're using already. So it's like, if we're letting those guys in, why don't we just allow everyone? It is part of the era. Just maybe make a note of it, make a special part of the Hall of Fame for that era, and just leave it be.
I'm aligned with you on that. So we've talked a little bit about Vegas, how this affects the offshore bets, everything like that, state to state. What about the actual leagues themselves? How does this help professional sports grow, if it does at all, in your opinion?
I think that ratings will boom because of this. We've noticed that the NFL, the NBA, MLB, all these sports leagues, they're noticing a decline in regards to ratings. You bring in sports betting. For one, people might have action on random games that they typically don't. Baseball is more of a regional sport. Maybe someone in the state of Illinois places a bet on the Texas Rangers versus the Oakland A's. They typically don't get in that game. They decide to buy the MLB package or something like that. Boom, there's a little bit of money right there, and they'll stay tuned in for longer because it's maybe not the case for baseball, though. Even if a team is down by 4, you want to see if they make that rally. If you've got money on it, you're going to be a little bit more invested. But in regards to football, let's say you've got a 14-point spread like it was earlier this year, the Oakland Raiders versus the New York Jets. Say the Jets are up by 17 and they were laying 14. This is a complete hypothetical. Yeah. Obviously, this was not the line, but a lot of people are tuned out at the 2-minute warning.
Right.
But if you've got money on that game, the plus 14, and your team is driving, you're going to be tuned in, praying that they get that garbage touchdown, so that way you win some money.
I'd be screaming at the TV at that point.
Well, exactly.
And with cable television subscriptions going down, what saves TV subscribers most? It's live events, it's sports especially. So I think you're right on there.
So yeah, with that, what Taylor said is, how does this change the major sports networks, like the ESPNs of the world? Are they going to put into their flagship show like SportsCenter, different segments of sports gambling and handicapping and how it is across, they might make their picks for that game, that NFL game, the MLB game, but then will they transition to what they think their picks are for actually against the spread?
We've already seen a begin in that, because I know that College Football Live, they do a lot of picks against the spread. Chris Felica has really done a lot of that. And then we see bad beats every week with Scott Van Pelt. So we've already seen the beginning of it, and I think we're just going to see more and more of it. I feel like gambling is becoming less and less taboo every single day. Now that it's legalized, there's going to be more of a demand for it, and that means you're going to see more and more segments pop up on more of these shows.
Absolutely. And you guys at VSIN seem to be in a perfect position to leverage this new shift and ruling.
Oh, yes, certainly. I got in at a very good time. I moved to Las Vegas in June of last year, so I was pretty much ahead of the curve on this one, getting in less than a year before sports gambling got legalized. Brent sent this up at just the right time. I feel like this is a perfect place at the perfect time for sports betting.
Perfect.
Greg, give us your thoughts on the complete bullshit integrity fee that these leagues are proposing.
Oh, it's complete garbage. If they want to talk about integrity, the NBA has to look themselves in the mirror and try to get rid of this tanking. Devin Booker was stayed today for a month and a half.
Exactly.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. You've got guys, out because of rest with 2 games left in the season, with the team like 20 games out of a playoff spot. What is he resting for? Seriously.
Right.
So, I think that these leagues, what they need to realize is that sports betting is going to generate a lot more viewership. The viewers are going to stay longer because they have money on the game when the game is completely out of reach. This is an overall win for these sports leagues. Just take the bigger viewership, take the more subscribers, take the sports betting affiliated companies that are going to be jumping on as sponsors, and be happy.
Sensible Nation, just so you know, and Taylor and Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but the integrity fee that we're referencing is the major sports leagues are, I don't want to say proposing, but coming up with the idea of they might want to take a quote-unquote integrity fee off the top of your bet when you place a bet, so they get a little piece of the action.
That is correct, 1%. And 1% doesn't sound significant, but if you take a look, sports books make about 4 or 5% off of your bet. So every $100 that's wagered, they typically make between 4 and 5%. So that means that they would essentially be cutting the profit that these sports books make by between 20 and 25%.
Wow. Well, all right. So let's talk about what's going on in your career. Obviously, you said you moved out to Vegas last June. College basketball is your expertise. What do you do? What do you keep yourself busy with in the off season?
Right now, I'm doing a lot of the NBA mock draft stuff. I was actually on VSIN just a couple hours ago, breaking down my mock draft, seeing who's all going number 1, whether it's going to be Luka Doncic or DeAndre Ayton. I also do some baseball picks. I tweet those out at my Twitter account at @GUnit_81, and I just keep up with a little bit of everything because I always like to get in on sports betting. I'm a little bit of a degenerate. If you notice, I've got a whole lot more plays than most other handicappers, but I love it. I would rather have a little bit too much action than a little bit too little.
Greg, who do you got the Bulls taking at 7?
Oh, man, that is a good question. I think it's going to be Wendell Carter, personally. If he falls to 7, I think that the Bulls will take Wendell Carter. I certainly don't think it's going to be Trae Young. I know that I've had a lot of Bulls fans asking me if I think they'll take Trae Young. I think that's a big fat no.
Yeah.
And I also have him going number 6 to the Magic.
Wendell Carter's got like, what is it, like this 7-something wingspan?
Yes, he does. He's out of Duke, very versatile player. Doesn't necessarily have the best jump shot, but he's a player that you can develop. He was a one-and-done guy with Duke. He got lost in the shadow at times with Marvin Bagley III, but I feel like he's a very good defender, and he's a guy that can step in and make an instant impact on the Bulls.
Excellent. Awesome. So as far as March Madness goes, March was kind of brutal for many, including myself. I know. How did you fare, and what was the deal this March? It was a wild one, wasn't it?
Well, I had Virginia winning the national championship. So
I had a minute.
It was about as good as yours. So it was just absolute insanity. You had upset after upset after upset. As you guys know, loyal Chicago and Sister Jean.
Hell yeah, Sister Jean.
So, it was just an absolutely insane March. It was a lot of fun. The good news is my picks in the lesser conference tournaments went 26-9, so I was happy about that. It made up for the losses in the NCAA tournament, as that was just a complete and utter crapshoot.
Attaboy. How about give us your way too early Final Four for next year?
Oh, boy. I think you have to go with Kansas. I mean, they're getting in a pair of twins from Memphis, the Lawson twins. They're going to be locked and loaded. I think Udoka Azubuike comes back along with LaGerald Vick. So I think that they make the Final Four. I really like Duke's recruiting class. They've got each of the top 3 players from ESPN's Top 100 coming in. Kentucky has some pieces coming back. So I think that Kentucky has a good chance to make the Final Four. And look out for LSU. I mean, a former player of the year in regards to the JUCO ranks is joining them, Cavell Bigby Williams. He is a transfer from Oregon. They've got Waters coming back, the very talented guard. Will Wade did a very good job in his first year with LSU, getting them to the NIT. They vastly overachieved what many people thought they would. So I think that LSU might be that sleeper team for the Final Four.
Awesome. Excellent. All right, one last question. Sensible or not, paying men's college basketball student athletes. Is it sensible or not sensible?
Depends on how much. I don't think that you should be wheeling out there like $20 million a year. These guys should not be getting paid like LeBron James. But at the same time, the fact that they get nothing but tuition, room and board, and food seems too low for me. So I think meet somewhere in the middle. Make it so that they're not becoming millionaires overnight. But at the same time, give them more than what they're getting right now.
Yeah. Greg, one last thought you got to give us, because I'm a big 670 The Score listener. I know VSIN is partnered with them. I hear Musburger on the Score all the time. Give us your best Musburger story, comment, thought from the legend.
Oh, man. It was Super Bowl. It was a Super Bowl between the New England Patriots and the Atlanta Falcons last year. I was not here for it, but I heard this through the grapevine. We all remember Atlanta going up 28-3.
Yes,
Brent
we do.
Musburger puts on his coat, puts on his hat. He says, "That's all, folks," and he walks out. The party's over. The party was not over, and New England won the Super Bowl. I just thought that was so funny.
Fantastic. All right, tell us where we can find you on social media. I know you mentioned it earlier. Where else?
At gunit_81 on Twitter. I also do some writing for the Vegas Stats and Information website that is at VSIN.com.
Greg, thanks for joining us.
Greg, really appreciate your time, man.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
Have a good one.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was our interview with Greg Peterson. Hope you guys enjoyed. He had a really interesting take on the recent Supreme Court ruling. I highly encourage you guys to listen to him on VSIN. It's especially during college basketball season and March Madness in particular.
Start saving your paychecks and get the sports gambling in.
Exactly. So we are Sensible People. We thank you for listening to this bonus episode. You can follow us on Twitter at sensible_people and on Instagram at sensiblepeople, and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Podchaser.
And buy some merchandise at sensiblepeoplepodcast.com and click the shop tab.
We are Sensible People. See you guys.
See you, sensible fuckers.